Now I have the honor to welcome our Shadowgram speaker. He is a current full-time member of the Springfield Telescope Makers and a retired reverend. He's living in Facein, Vermont, and his name is Al Tinker, and he's just a wonderful guy, and I think you'll agree with me after you hear him talk tonight. So let's give him a nice welcome.
Thank you, Bob. In the early days, this part of the program was called Stellafane Lore. And in the decade prior to 1970, the speech was always given by John C. Pierce, who was one of Stellafane's founders. In 1971, I came to Stellafane for the first time, did not know a soul, didn't know anyone, but I had made a telescope mirror and I needed to mount it and I didn't know how to do that. So I came, and in this slot that year, the speech was entitled, "In Memory of John C. Pierce." And it was given by Walter Scott Houston, who was, I think even then, an editor of Sky and Telescope. The following year, 1971, Scotty changed the name from Stellafane Lore to the Shadowgram. And Scotty did a reflection, I think meditation, on astronomy and the Stellafane experience. And he did the Shadowgram from 1971 until his death in 1993, 21 years. I doubt if it will ever be matched by anyone. In 1971, interesting in lieu of tonight's program, his Shadowgram was on how to find a meteorite. He lived in Haddam, Connecticut. Haddam, Connecticut. And Walter told us that within a quarter of a mile of his house, there was probably a meteorite, and a nice one. And he said that he could spend his lifetime looking for that meteorite and never find it. But he said, if I tell everybody I know what I'm looking for, I increase my chances of finding that meteorite exponentially. And he did. He told everybody he knew, if you're out in the garden digging around in the flower patch and you find a heavy rock, bring it over and let me see it. He had started that process in Kansas when he was teaching on the faculty. And he would talk to his farmers and say, if you're ever out in Kansas in the farmland and you hit a rock with your plow, bring it over and let me see it, and we'll look at it and see if it is a meteorite. I've told that story 100,000 times since 1971 to people who are looking for a job. Tell everybody you know what kind of a job you're looking for. To people looking for spouses, tell everybody you know what you're looking for in a spouse. And you'll increase your chances of finding your goal exponentially. The first Shadowgram I heard in 1971. Let's reflect for a moment. Look up at the heavens. I believe that's Arcturus over here, and you speed on to Spica. That's Vega? Okay, good. The fourth brightest in the sky, right? In not too long a time, what is going to appear over our heads is absolute reality. There's nothing fake about it. When the ancient Greeks looked up like we're doing, what they saw was earth, air, fire, and water. When Augustine looked up at the sky, What he saw was the mind of God. What we see are protons and neutrons and neutrinos and bosons. What was the latest one found? Higgs boson. And we believe we're on the right track. Galileo tried to measure the speed of light. And he did a wonderful experiment. He put a buddy over in the tower across the valley and said to him, when you see my lantern open and flash, you flash me back. And he measured the distance between himself and the tower, and he knew he could determine the speed of light. He figured the reaction time and concluded that the speed of light was infinite. It was not the right conclusion. The problem was he didn't have the right instrument sensitivity. We believe that big collider that the boson, Higgs boson, was discovered in is a super collider, but we'll build them even better. We haven't scratched the surface. Well, we may have scratched the surface, but more is to come. And we're going to hear a lot more soon about Mars from our friend Curiosity, who's there. Change directions a little bit, make you feel better. Each of us has 4 grandparents. You may have met them, you may not have met them, but you have 4. We'll call those the first generation of our grandparents. In the second generation, they're 8. In the third generation, they're 16. In the fourth generation, they're 32. And in the fifth generation, they're 64. Guess how many grandparents you have in the 25th generation of your grandparents? 6, 7, comma, 1, 0, 8, comma, 8, 6, 4. 67,108,864 grandparents. And the fascinating thing is, if you remove any one of them from that circle, you don't show up in the center of the circle because one of your parents never gets born. Are you feeling good? Are you feeling like a Stellafane lottery winner? Well, we should. Because between your 4 grandparents and your first generation of grandparents and the 67 million in the 25th generation of grandparents, they're probably, not probably, but they're upwards of 134 million persons who are your grandparents. And you remove any of them, and you don't show up in the middle because one of your parents never gets born. Let's put the solar system on a yardstick. At 0 inches is the sun. At 1 inch is the Earth. And we'll call that distance an astronomical unit, 1 inch. Jupiter is at 5. Saturn is at 20. Uranus is at 30. No, wait, I'm backwards, I guess. Neptune is at 32, and Pluto, as the Kuiper Belt object, sometimes is closer than Neptune, but more often than not beyond. So within a yardstick, we've got the solar system. It so happens that there are about as many inches in a mile as there are astronomical units in a light year. At that scale, Proxima Centauri is sitting on exit 7 on I-91, 4.3 miles away from here. Between the end of the yardstick and exit 7, there's nothing. Maybe some Kuiper Belt objects. This direction, there's nothing. This direction, there's nothing. That direction, there's nothing. For 4.3 miles, light years. A sphere of incredible nothingness. Are you feeling good about being something? Astronomy has the way of making you sing loud songs in the bathtub. It has a way of making you dance barefoot on the grass at midnight under a sky full of stars. It has a way of making you hope for whipped cream on your strawberries. But if all of us are not related in that, if all of us don't have shared any grandparents at all, if we go back to about the time of Chaucer, when all those grandparents were living, that would be too many people on the face of the earth. The world's population was not that great. So wouldn't it be interesting to know how many grandparents we share? You thought you were coming to an astronomical convention. Welcome to a family reunion. And I'm sure that carved on each of our DNA are two chemical targets. One says Stellafane. The other is encoded, build a mirror. Welcome to Stellafane. It's a wonderful life. Sing loud songs in the bathtub, dance barefooted on the grass at midnight, and always hope for whipped cream on your strawberry. Thank you.
Thank you, Al.